أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
Hey, and welcome back to Universal Unity. Today I'm going to be talking about music, God willing. Many Muslims and non-Muslims have probably heard before that music is forbidden in the Quran or Islam. So today I'm going to get down to what really is the Quranic ruling on music. So despite the religious ruling of most Islamic scholars that music is technically forbidden in Islam, many people don't understand it. Why would God forbid something like music? Most people either disbelieve in it, don't understand it, or just ignore it completely. Many people believe this to be strict and unnecessary. Would God really prohibit all music? What about music with good messages, messages of peace, love, or even music that involves worshiping God, glorifying Him, praising Him? What about with music with no lyrics, just instrumentals, like classical music or electronic music? The reason for the prohibition of music, usually scholars will give about 3 reasons for them. Number one is that the Prophet Muhammad supposedly deemed them to be forbidden. This is based off of oral traditions known as hadith. These hadith were written about 200 years after Prophet Muhammad died, and they were passed on orally before that. Another reason they give is that music has often been associated with illicit activities like gambling, drinking, adultery. They also say that music often has a bad message and is used to influence people, influence the masses, children, whoever. So let's examine these points and look at them from a different point of view and see which is more logical. So, God willing, we're going to get straight into the facts based off of religious texts. And by religious texts, I'm referring to the Quran, of course. So, let's see what God has to say about prohibitions, creating and following prohibitions other than those instituted specifically by God. Chapter 3, verse 94. Those who fabricate false prohibitions after this and attribute them to God are truly wicked. So God is saying here that creating a false prohibition and then saying that it is decreed by God is a gross offense. It is a truly wicked act. Chapter 7, verse 32. Say, who prohibited the nice things God has created for His creatures and the good provisions? Say, such provisions are to be enjoyed in this life by those who believe. Moreover, the good provisions will be exclusively theirs on the day of resurrection. We thus explain the revelations for people who know. So in this verse, God is telling us that He's created for us many nice things and good provisions, and that these nice things and good provisions are meant to be enjoyed by us, both in this life and in the hereafter. Chapter 16, verse 35. The idol worshippers say, had God willed, we would not worship any idols besides Him, nor would our parents, nor would we prohibit anything besides His prohibitions. Those before them have done the same. Can the messengers do anything but deliver the complete message? So you see, the idol worshippers here are quoted saying that they prohibited things other than what God has specifically prohibited. This is a very common thing for human beings to do. They always create extra prohibitions, rules, and regulations. They make these self-imposed laws and they make the religion more difficult. And again, I'd like to note at the end of that verse, God says that we didn't send any messenger to do anything but deliver the complete message. So the scripture that they brought, for example. And for Muhammad, that would be the Quran. His only mission was to just come and deliver the Quran. That has all the rules, regulations, prohibitions, everything in them. Now that we know how gross of an offense creating a false prohibition is, we can appreciate why we must be very careful not to prohibit anything that wasn't specifically prohibited by God. Think of it as taking away someone's right. Someone has the right to eat, drink, or do something, and you are saying, no, you do not have that right. It is a gross offense. The most common verse stated by those who say that music is prohibited, and they like to showcase this verse saying, look, based off of this verse, music is prohibited, is chapter 31, verse 6. Ironically, when this verse is cited correctly, it goes against those who actually quote it. You see, scholars, they play a little game. They like to use English and Arabic when citing verses when it best suits them. Among the people, there are those who uphold baseless hadith and thus divert others from the path of God without knowledge and take it in vain. These have thus incurred a shameful retribution. God actually uses the word hadith in this verse, but scholars like to translate this into English and use the word, for example, tales or stories or narrations, because if they use the Arabic word, it would look bad on the hadith that they follow. God knew when He was revealing the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad that many hundreds of years after his death, people would create these narrations, these sayings, these traditions, and falsely attribute them to Prophet Muhammad. So, in this verse and many more verses, God actually condemns hadith by name. To further emphasize and prove that the Prophet Muhammad did not create any extra rulings or teachings outside of the Quran, I share with you the following verses. Chapter 69, verses 38 to 47. I swear by what you see and what you do not see. This is the utterance of an honorable messenger, not the utterance of a poet. Rarely do you believe, nor the utterance of a soothsayer. Rarely do you take heed. A revelation from the Lord of the universe. Had he uttered any other teachings, we would have punished him. We would have stopped the revelation to him. None of you could have helped him. These verses clearly state that Muhammad was only allowed to teach the Quran and nothing else. If it is not found in the Quran, it is not from Muhammad or from God. Thus, these sayings, teachings, and rulings about the prohibition of music found in the Hadith are not valid and they are fabricated, along with any other Hadith regarding religious laws and rulings not found in the Quran. To combat the false logic that music should be prohibited just because of its association with illicit activities, one could provide the same argument for many other things like money. Money is used to fuel wars, to buy illegal things, to have illegal things and harmful things done. It causes corruption and greed. So based off that logic, money should also be forbidden. So while like money, music has been associated with illegal activities, it can also be used for beneficial and good activities. Money can be used for charity, for example. Similarly, music can be used for example, spreading positive messages or the worship and commemoration of God. In fact, the Psalms given to the messenger David were all poems and songs. Why would God prohibit music and then give David, a messenger of God, music and poems as revelation? Even the Quran is written with a melodic and rhythm-like manner. The angels sing to praise God. Chapter 2, verse 30. Recall that your Lord said to the angels, I am placing a representative on earth. They said, will you place therein one who will spread evil therein and shed blood, while we sing your praises, glorify you, and uphold your absolute authority? He said, I know what you do not know. God even commands that we sing his praises. Chapter 15, verse 98. You shall sing the praises of your Lord and be with the prostrators. Hopefully by now any skeptics, doubters, the ignorant, or those seeking the truth can see that God has not prohibited music. Now the question is probably going to be asked, well, what about music that have bad messages that talk about sex, violence, drugs, alcoholism, things like that? And it's a good question. And the answer to all these questions are found inside of the Quran. Remember, the Quran is complete, perfect, fully detailed. God left nothing out. Chapter 4, verse 148. God does not like the utterance of bad language. Unless one is treated with gross injustice, God is hearer, knower. Chapter 33, verse 70. O you who believe, reverence God and utter only the correct utterances. Chapter 56, verse 25. They never hear any nonsense therein, nor sinful utterances. Chapter 35, verse 10. Anyone seeking dignity should know that to God belongs all dignity. To him ascends the good words, and he exalts the righteous works. As for those who scheme evil works, they incur severe retribution. The scheming of such people is destined to fail. Chapter 3, verse 104. Let there be a community of you who invite to what is good, advocate righteousness, and forbid evil. These are the winners. Chapter 22, verse 41. They are those who, if we appointed them as rulers on earth, they would establish the contact prayers, the obligatory charity, and would advocate righteousness and forbid evil. God is the ultimate ruler. So singing to or listening to songs about adultery, drugs containing swear words, violence, or other unrighteous utterances are not advocated by God. Listening to this kind of music only serves to harm the soul. So based off of the Quran, one can come to the logical conclusion that these are not righteous songs. Why would I listen to such unrighteous songs? But again, music is not prohibited. Just like speech, we can listen to or speak good things, or we can speak and listen to bad things. Speech is not the issue. It's the context and the way that it is used. Similarly, music is not the issue. It's the context and how it is used negatively that's the issue. Anything can be used negatively or positively. It all comes down to whether or not you choose to use it positively. God willing, you are more enlightened regarding the Quranic perspective on music after having watched this video. Peace be upon you and God bless.
لا إله إلا الله